Greetings today. We're coming at you from Montreal, Canada, and we have a special guest in this program today. His name is Pastor Art Lucier. He was organizing an event here in Montreal. He's all the way from British Columbia and from a ministry and the church called Harvest Church. And today we're having him discuss with us, sharing with us what took place, because the event was actually canceled by the government of Quebec, stating that the event was anti-abortion, apparently. And so the event was canceled at the Palais des Congrès in Montreal. And so today we would like to know more details on what transpired, what happened. And so we have with us today Pastor Art Lucier from Kelowna, BC with us. Greetings, Pastor Art.
Hello, bonjour.
Comment ça va?
Oh, très bien, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. When we hear Lucier, the family name, it's almost like a French name. Is there any French roots to that name?
So I had my dad's cousin went back to the village in France where we came from in 1642. We landed in Quebec on the Lucier side. And eventually, my grandparents settled in Saskatchewan, Manitoba area. So married into the Cree Nation. My grandma was actually Cree. My grandpa is a Frenchman, Lucier. That's on my dad's side. And on my mother's side, my grandpa's name is Charlie Renaud. And he was orphaned on the streets of Montreal in 1914 at the beginning of World War I. So my roots seem to point back to Quebec in a couple of ways.
In many ways.
Yeah.
I myself, I'm born in Montreal. My parents are from Haitian and St. Lucian descent.
Wow.
But, so I'm a Québécois, like you said. And you said it well, because a lot of Canadians say Quebecers, but the right form to say it is Québécois, as you did.
Québécois.
It's a pleasure to have you, Pastor, today.
Thank you.
And I'm honored to talk to you today because you're part of the few pastors that stood up like we did against the measures that were imposed, especially in the context of churches getting together. And I think you agree with us. This is clearly a precedent to something even major against the church. But I'd like to talk today of what transpired, what took place just recently when this event was canceled. Can you talk to us about the reasons why you believe they canceled the meeting that you were about to have in Montreal?
Well, thank you very much. Good question. Just for the viewing audience, listeners, we've done 5 major events as a ministry out of Kelowna around the nation of Canada, dealing with reconciliation, forgiveness, and returning to God. This would have been our 6th event, 6th Battle for Canada. Kind of we have another term, another Faith, Fire, Freedom event, and returning to the faith in Jesus, asking for the fire of God to come upon His church again, and freedom from sin, from addictions, but also freedom as Canadians. And so when we came into Quebec City and signed a contract last February for the Des Congrès Convention Center, everything was going normally as planned, and we had spent hundreds and hundreds of hours as a ministry to put on this event for 1,000 people, maybe even 1,500. We could have expected. We had 1,500 chairs. We've done events where there's been 1,500, even 2,800 people in the past. So, but we were told by the CBC news article that the Quebec government, more pointedly the Minister of Tourism, Minister Poulou, had forced the CEO of the Des Congrès Convention Center to cancel our contract, to break the law, and to cancel what we had signed as a legal document. They had deemed our event as a anti-abortion rally, which was a lie. We are unashamedly pro-life as an organization, but there was no mention in any of our videos or any of our advertising that would be a pro-life event. It was not going to be. It was going to be reconciliation and a 10-day revival event, really, of sorts. So to hear from the CBC or through the CBC that the government had forced the cancellation, it was a shock to us. Let me just say that. It was a shock.
What was, so you spoke about how the event was supposed to be kind of a gathering together, reconciliation between the two nations,
yes.
the natives and also the Canadians to bring about.
Yeah, it was going to be First Nations, French, like the Quebecois, and the English, and even immigrants coming together, having communion, saying we are one under God.
So they decided to change the vision of the event for something pertaining to anti-abortion, a gathering or meeting or event. So there's absolutely nothing in the advertising or the promotion of the event that could let people believe that was the actual reason why the meeting was taking place, to be anti-abortion, right?
Yeah, there was zero. It's a fabricated lie. What it is, I believe, it would appear, my opinion, it's a political posturing of some here in Quebec, in the government, in Quebec City. And so they deemed it as an anti-abortion event to make a loud proclamation and stand that there is no room for people who would think differently or be pro-life. They deemed it as that for their own political gain, which I think is going to backfire. What Minister Prulu has done, as well as others who have agreed, is they have simply broke the law.
They broke the law. Mm-hmm.
They have broke the law.
And so that's why I think it's important to put this event to light, because this, I believe, is a precedent of what's to come. If we keep silent on this issue, I think you're the first one, but you won't be the last one to go through this ordeal or this experience. Now, I've heard, and I need to confirm that with you, it would seem that the Palais des Congrès, looking at the situation, gave you an option to maybe find another venue to have the event. What transpired after? What took place after that proposal from the Palais des Congrès, if my information is right? There was supposed to be another venue that they would present to you so that the event could still take place. But what happened after that? We heard about an alleged act of violence from Pastor Art towards an employee of the Palais des Congrès, apparently.
Yes. So let's look at the facts. June 2nd, 4 a.m., CBC puts out a news article saying that Minister Prulu has talked to the CEO of the Des Congrès Convention Center for them to cancel the contract. But in the news article, it said that the Congress, the CEO there, would help us find another suitable location. But I'm here to tell you and your audience that 8 hours later, our office in Kelowna received a message from the CEO of the Des Congrès Convention Center stating that the number one reason that they were pulling the contract was that on a prior visit 5 weeks earlier, on April 28th in 2023, when I went with someone in our ministry to go look at the Des Congrès, that it was alleged that I assaulted an employee of the Des Congrès Convention Center. This is another fabricated lie. In the CBC News article that was 8 hours earlier, it stated that they would help us to find another location. 8 hours later, in a letter to our ministry from the CEO, he alleges that I assaulted one of his employees, and that we need to find another place for our event. They did not state in that letter that they would help us. They have not. We have not heard from the Day Congress. We have not heard anything from the government nor the CEO of the Day Congress. And this fabricated lie, I'm sure there's cameras in the place. There was nothing recorded with the RCMP. I had not even one bad word with anyone at the convention center. Everything was going very well. To be accused of assaulting somebody 5 weeks later was a shock. On the very same day that the news article came out saying that the minister was calling our event an anti-abortion event. This is fabrication, it's a tragedy, and it's lies to trying to cover up some people who have broken the law.
So this is mesmerizing to see. I mean, this is pretty much
crazy.
A scandal. And my thinking now and my question is as follows. Why do they go to such length to destroy this type of Christian event?
Well, I think it's a tall tale.
According to your humble opinion, what would be the motive?
So here's what I think is happening to the nation of Canada. Little bit by little bit, we are losing our rights. Little bit by little bit, we are told that we cannot have certain opinions or thoughts or values anymore in the land of Canada. In fact, this event is what they have done is said, we do not want you to believe what you believe. You are pro-life, we are pro-choice, but because you believe in pro-life, we will punish you and you will not be allowed to use public venues anymore. I'm very disturbed at this line of thinking. Where does it stop? If a parent wants to remove their children from godless education or to homeschool them, are they going to be punished? If we have differences of thought when we exercise even religious freedoms, are we going to be banned from hospitals, public transportation? This is a slippery slope that is very greasy. We're sliding down, and it's time to say enough is enough. We need to stand before it's too late.
Absolutely. And for that, I need to say amen to that. We stood in Canada, in Montreal, against what was transpiring, what was imposed upon us in terms of measures, sanitary measures, they say. And we went along with, what they told us to do so that in the span of 2 weeks, the curb could be, softened in terms of the infection. And we did. But this 2 weeks began to be more like a 3, almost a 4 months period of lockdowns. And so when they began to prepare for the second lockdown, we took a stand. We warned the people alongside us. We told them that because of the impact, the tremendous impact of not getting together, to pray together, to fellowship together, not only is there a spiritual impact upon the people of the community, of the congregation, but also there's a tremendous spiritual impact to the detriment of the health of the congregation. And I stood and we made a public notice to the authorities that we followed along the first lockdown, but the second lockdown, we will not be able, just by reason of conscience, as a shepherd, we will not be able to keep our doors closed. We will not force people to come. But certainly in this time of crisis, the house of God has to be open. And so when we did so, we were attacked like we've never been attacked in all these years serving the Lord. All the media platforms, CBC and TVA and just to name a few, and the newspapers came at us every Sunday, attacking us. A certain numbers of police cars, like if we were terrorists, just because we committed the crime to keep God's doors open for people to hear the message of salvation and the message of the kingdom. And so when we see the way that we are losing our rights and freedom, by increments, what would be your message to other pastors? Because when we stood, people did not understand us, especially people in the Christian community did not understand why we felt by the Lord that we needed to take a stand. And my inspiration was Pastor, and still is, Pastor Henry Hildebrand, which was one of the first ones to stand in Canada back then in 2020. So coming back from this gathering that was taking place in the month of August, before the Parliament of Canada, coming back to Quebec, the Lord really convicted me that I needed to keep the doors of the house of God open. No pastors really took the public stand to do the same at that moment. Following the next year, one pastor stood up and others kept their doors open in a silent fashion, but they still began to keep their doors open, but they were kind of shy to express their positions clearly concerning these measurements that have been, pushed down our throats in terms of sanitary measures. What would be your message to our colleagues as pastors before what's taking place? Because now we're not talking about the pandemic anymore, but still we feel that this agenda to sift away our rights and freedoms is still an active plan. It's still a political plan or agenda with different themes, but we're still heading the same way. Your story is an example of that. What would your message be to pastors today of Quebec, pastors of Canada, to do for the upcoming weeks and months to come and the other crises that are on their way?
Well, as some may know, we were one of the very only churches in British Columbia that stayed open. We were in court. We had many fines, but we had a conviction of the Lord. And let me just tell the pastors that we prayed about it. We did our best for probably 8 months to follow all the guidelines. No more than 50 people we were allowed. Many churches simply shut down the whole time, even though they were allowed 50 people. We had multiple services. But then in November of 2020, our health officer in British Columbia said that the churches and the churches only need to shut down for 2 weeks while everything else was allowed to remain open. This is where I brought it to the Lord. I said, Father, I said, God, do you want us to stay close? Should we obey the government? And I said, we had a conviction. No, we are not going to shut down the church. But you know what? If we were supposed to, I prayed. I said, God, and going to bed that night, I asked the Lord for a dream. I said, Lord, you don't have to answer me, but I know that sometimes you do. Would you give me a dream? That night, I had a dream. I had dreamt that I was standing on a podium overlooking about 3 feet above a mass crowd of Canadians. And I shouted out in my dream, pastors of Canada, we must open up the churches and we must stand in unity. So my message to the pastors of Canada would be this. Pastors of Canada, we must keep the churches open and we must stand in unity. Okay, so what I mean by that too in saying that is they're coming for our kids. They're fully coming for our rights. They're trying to punish us for what we believe. They're going to try to bring in a social credit score connected to our finances, that if you believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, or there's only 2 genders, or you believe in life begins at conception, that you're punished by having a lower social credit score. Thus, you can't travel or you can't do this and that. You are a second-class citizen. Pastors of Canada, we must stand now for our children, for life, and for our rights. Even the Apostle Paul stood for his rights. He says, you will not beat me like that. I am a Roman citizen. Listen, there's only one thing holding back full-on tyranny from taking over Canada, and it's God's people. It's his church. If we shut up, if we close up, board up, and if we sit down, the enemy comes in, and we are going to be to blame. So it's time to stand. It's time to be loud. It's time to stand for God, for our children. And I'll say it like this. In the prayer of Louis Riel from 1885, the original resistance, we lift our hand to the Lord that he would grant us the courage of the wolf to defend our families, the altar of the Lord and religious liberties, and above all, liberté or freedom. That's the prayer of Louis Riel. That's my prayer. Let it be all of ours prayer.
Amen to that, Pastor. And I prayed this prayer with you as well. And the voice of God is echoing, because I remember the first time I heard Pastor Henry Hildebrand, he spoke exactly the same things. He was shouting, keep the doors of God's house open. Let's be united. Keep the doors and let's unite. Keep the doors open and let's unite for the Lord. And so I pray that other pastors will take courage to do the work of ministry that they've been called to do as shepherd, to protect the flock of God, and also to be a shining light to this world that is in dire darkness today. It is my understanding that certain legal actions are being taken because of this injustice that was brought about against the ministry, against you, and against this event that had nothing to do with abortion. And even though it would have been for abortion, I don't believe they have the right to cancel an event as such.
No,
and so this I feel, to my humble opinion, seems to be a precedent to make us understand this is a new standard. This is the new norm. They will break the law in order to force us to accept their standard, their new standard for morality and whatnot. And so, what are according to you, what you feel free to share to the public, to the audience today, is the legal actions taken to, claim your rights and freedoms as a Canadian Christian person. It's an event.
Yeah, so that's another, good question of what's happening. It's like, but here's what we know and what we feel. If someone breaks the law, they need to be held into account. If an elected official comes and punishes any Canadian by using the law in a wrong way, for example, punishing someone for what they believe just because they believe something different. If an elected official uses power unjustly, they need to be held to account. The law is there for the lawbreakers. It's to hold them to account. The government, nobody is allowed to cancel a contract based on one's belief. Where does this stop? Just because I'm pro-life, does that mean I'm not allowed to rent a public pool or to go on public transportation? But what the Minister of Quebec has done is using their power wrongly by forcing the CEO of the Des Congrès Convention Center to break the law and cancel our contract. This must be addressed. We will be filing a lawsuit and saying you cannot do this. And I will say this, we as Canadians, the Quebecois or Canadians overall, we need to know, is it now the new normal that they are allowed to punish us for what we believe? If we believe in defense of our children or of our rights or of religious liberties or the right of assembly or the right to believe in anything? Or is this the new normal that they're allowed to, and we're supposed to be okay? Well, I'm telling you, Canada, we cannot let them just take our rights, take our children, or shut down the churches or shut our voices down. We will be held accountable before God. So I'm telling you, I don't want to fight, but we're going to fight this. Our lawyers are behind us. We have an incredible, powerful judge who knows the law behind us. And we are going to be holding the government of Quebec and anyone who colluded with her to account. And I'm saying this, one more thing. I'm calling for the resignation of Minister Perlou. You have broken the law, and you are not above the law, and you will be held to account.
We will be praying and continue to support you, Pastor Lucier. I just want to tell you, as we're coming to a close today in this interview, first of all, I want people to be aware there's an event coming on the Plaine d'Abraham for the 24th of June with your ministry, where an event will take place. Could you talk to us just a few seconds on what will take place right here in the province of Quebec on the Plaine d'Abraham for the 24th of June, La Saint-Jean-Baptiste celebration?
What we want to do is a very quiet, more of a secret event at this point, just to go and make it right between us and God. Francophones, Quebecois, English, First Peoples come together before God and say, God, forgive us for the sins and the travesties of this nation since the beginning and the inception of Canada. We are just saying, it's really prayer and a taking of communion together on the plains, asking God to heal our land. That's all it is. We do not have a set time yet. We do not want the wrong people showing up and giving us a hard time. We do not want to fight. We don't want, it's not some big public event. But there are many who are coming with us to have communion on the plains of Abraham. If there's anyone who is interested in joining us, you can, I would say, email Casey, that's CASEY, at CanadianFirewall.ca.
That you have a Facebook page also, Battle for Canada.
Well, here's the deal. The Battle for Canada is officially canceled. The government has not made it easy for us to get another venue. The 1,000 people who are coming are not coming. We've not brought our big sound system or our bus. We have canceled it. What we are now is simply some people who love Canada and Quebec coming together to pray unofficially. And if you want to be involved, I can put in the chat the email for those who may want to come and stand with us and bless Canada and ask for God to bless this land once again. Sorry, I'm going to write that again. It disappeared. That's Casey at Canadian Firewall, CanadianFirewall.ca. And there it is. If you want to post that up for people to see. Anyway.
Excellent. So on the behalf of Luxe Media and myself, Pastor Carlos Norbal from Église Nouvelle Création in Montreal, I want you to know anytime you need our support, our doors will be open for you here in Montreal. We believe in what you're doing, and we're standing for the same cause and for the same God in Christ's name. So we just wanted to extend.
You know what? I want to say this before we go. The battle for Canada, for our freedoms, for the fire of God to return, for faith to return to the hearts of all Canadians. We are coming back to Quebec at a later time. Sometime next year, we're going to come to Montreal, into a big venue, and we're going to call the Quebecois to stand with Canadians, with the First Peoples, before God, because more than ever, we need God. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Pastor Art Lucier. And we'll keep you in prayer. And may God bless every endeavor and every actions that you take for his name's sake.
Thank you very much.